And now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll proceed with the second part of our webinar. We have Professor Eri Kurniawan, who is a professor of interdisciplinary linguistics at Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. His research areas lie at the intersection of linguistic documentation and analysis of Indonesian type languages, especially the Baduy Sundanese language, forensic linguistics, English language teaching, and discourse genre analysis of English, especially for academic research publication purposes. And his presentation topic is the rhetorical structures and lexical bundles of highly cited Scopus-indexed journal articles across disciplines. All right, and without delay, I welcome Prof. Eri Kurniawan for his talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Afida. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Allow me to share my screen. Can you see my slides from your end?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. First of all, I'd like to extend my gratitude for inviting me and having me here to share what my team and I have done over the past 5 years. The talk that I'm going to be sharing with you today is exactly derived from some of the results of our project that we just completed this past year, titled Crafting Effective Journal Manuscripts, Insights from Highly Cited Scopus Articles. This is my profile, just in case you want to communicate with me or somehow perhaps you can have some, follow up with future discussions or collaborations. All right. Today I'm going to start with some background and then some problem literature review, very brief about that, and then methodology results, which will center on conventional moves, and then conclusion and selected references. Let me start with the background. As we are all aware, academic success today is determined by scientific publications, and I'm talking about the academic world, because according to Habibi and Highland, researchers, including ourselves, are now more engaged in publishing scholarly works than ever. And we do that because we want to keep up with scientific advancement. And it is very true in our context, and perhaps it might be true in the Malaysian context and also in other countries' context. Study completion and promotion of lecturers or researchers are determined by, among others, publications in national and or international journals. In the case of international publications, research has shown that publishing in reputable international journals is somehow associated with the mission of internationalizations or reputations. That is why we have seen some trends, especially in the context of Southeast Asia, where universities are pretty much competing with each other with respect to international publications. And in countries like Indonesia, perhaps it's true of Malaysia and the Philippines, Thailand, international publications is key to increasing the competitive power academically and for promotion. So let's dive into the problems that we are facing, especially for students or novice authors. Novice authors often struggle with distinguishing between content and structure in their manuscripts. And I think one of the roots of the problem comes from the demands for them to publish their work in national international journals without sufficiently arming them with the necessary knowledge of international publication. So they are really working on which one should be their priority, presenting contents or working on the structure. And then many novice authors find it difficult to follow specific formatting guidelines. And among the issues faced by them in writing a journal in particular are substance or contents, organization, and style. And this is especially important for us as a people who come from a country that doesn't use English as the first language. We might face additional challenges with respect to language proficiency, but other than that, we are also confronted with the challenge of rhetorical skills, which affects clarity and quality of our manuscripts. And consequently, many novice authors, including myself, face rejection of their manuscript due to major framing or organizational issues. So let's talk a bit about the importance of discourse patterns. So discourse patterns, in this case, direct authors write following the logical sequence of steps in articles. So what this means is by knowing how people in certain academic community structure their ideas, then we can better make our manuscript understandable to them. And these discourse patterns somehow reflect the norms, academic norms, and expectation regarding the presentation of research or scientific argumentations. And conforming to these patterns will help researchers to tremendously integrate themselves into the global academic community. So, among the many possible analytical frameworks, what I've adopted so far in the past 5 years is genre analysis. Historically, it was initiated in 1980s by John Swales through English for Specific Purposes, or ESP. And in this particular school, genre is built from rhetorical structures which comprise moves and steps. A move is defined as a rhetorical element or a rhetorical unit, a text with a specific communicative function. I will later show you how to somehow detect or identify move or distinguishes it from a step. And this move will consist of smaller components called steps. Right. So what kind of gap that we attempted to fill in? So previous research on this particular area, um, a lot has been done with respect to different disciplinary fields. Linguistics, for instance, there has been numerous research, and then education, psychology, chemistry or biochemistry, engineering of all types, and then medicine and cross-disciplinary. So Lin and Evans 2021 is among the very few that somehow looks at cross-disciplinary data to really see how authors coming from a wide range of disciplines structure their ideas, whether there are conventions, which are true cross-disciplinary, or they are very specific discipline, let's say structure or move step patterns. But unfortunately, Lin's and Evans study only looks at these research articles pretty much superficially, only mapping out inbred structure. So for instance, their results only reveal that certain fields prefer inbred structure, while others prefer literature EMLRAD, for instance, or certain specific subjects or fields prefer EMRADC structure. So simply looking at the superficial structure of research articles. So far, what I have observed from literature, no one has really looked at the move pattern structures of research articles cross-disciplinary, in particular contrasting um, social and humanities fields versus natural and applied sciences. So what we did a top-down approach, following by Burkhardt and Upton 2007, and BCU building a corpus-based understanding approach, following Upton and Cohen 2009. In terms of particular analytical frameworks to dissect abstract, we adopted Highland's framework 2000. To look at introduction, we adopted Swell 2004. For methodology, we adopted Curtis 2017, and for results discussion and conclusion, we adopted Moran's Swell 2018. The data that we employed, 180 highly cited Scopus-indexed journal articles, and we were attempting to somehow entertain any possible cross-disciplinary variations, and so that we look at or we sample um, data from social humanity by especially looking at linguistics, education, and psychology, and natural applied sciences by especially looking at chemistry, electrical engineering, and medicine. To see whether certain moves or steps are important, or in our technical term, they are labeled conventional or obligatory. There are certain cutoff, and we adopted as well as 1990, when a move or a step occurs more than 50%, then that move or that step is considered conventional or obligatory. If it occurs less than that, then it's considered optional. And to avoid um, interpretation bias, or to somehow increase data trustworthiness, we also employed interquarter or interrater reliability tests, adopting Crookes 1986 using Cohen-Kappa measurement involving two raters. So what we basically did was we sampled 25% of the entire uh, corpus or data, and then we asked to raters to look at the same data points, and somehow uh, in the end we calculated the amount of conformity or agreement. So in terms of the number of moves or steps in each framework, Highland proposes 5 moves in the abstract introduction. Swells proposes 3 moves and 11 steps. For method, Cordus proposes 3 moves and 15 steps. And for result discussion conclusion, Moran and Swells propose 7 moves and 25 steps. So we pretty much adopted all these moves and steps by looking at our corpus to see whether all these moves and steps somehow appear as conventional or obligatory or optional moves. And here's our data. So we extracted 30 texts per subject. So 30 research articles for linguistic education, psychology, and 30 texts for each subject for natural and applied sciences, chemistry, engineering, and medicine. And that's the data for the number of words. And, quite interestingly, if you look at the comparison between humanities and social sciences versus natural and applied sciences, we from the humanities and social sciences field have to see that we are too verbose, right? We write too much, or I guess the way we present argumentations is through wording. So that's why the number of words that we use in presenting our research outcomes is relatively much greater than that of authors from natural and applied sciences. And so to also avoid biases in data selection, we focus only on Scopus-indexed journal articles. And especially we looked at 6 different fields as representing social sciences and humanities. We picked out linguistics, education, and psychology. And to represent natural and applied sciences, we picked out chemistry, engineering, and medicine. We started out with top 50 highly cited articles according to the Scopus database. And then we used this filter that the articles have to be research articles, not review or something else. And the structures have to be, the structures have to be inbred. And so from 50, we ended up having only 30 articles for each subject or for each discipline. And here's a sample of our frequency, or what we technically call saliency. So we pretty much count the number of appearance or occurrence of each move and step. For instance, here we are looking at the occurrence of move and step in the abstract from move 1, introduction, move 2, purpose, move 3, method, move 4, product or result or finding, and move 5, conclusion. And so you can see that there is some slight variation across disciplines. For instance, if you look at move 5, move 5 is not conventional across the board, except in biochemistry and medicine. But generally speaking, move 1, introduction, purpose, method, and product are conventional or perhaps obligatory across the fields. And let's take a look at some textual data. So we are looking at move 1 in the abstract, contrasting some sample data from humanities, or in this case, education, and from natural plant sciences from medicine. So they start out with introduction. In the first example, the author picks out this type of significance, for instance, while in the second data, in the medicine corpus, the author prefers to use this strategy of indicating research steps. So there are multiple different steps under each move. And then in the second move, purpose, basically what the authors are doing here is to simply delineate the purpose of the research. And in the next move, method, here I'm also contrasting education and medicine. I guess it depends on the nature of the research, but you can see very clearly that there is a difference in terms of the amount of detail, especially in the medicine abstracts, right? In this particular example, there is some detail about instruments, right? And then the locus, the time, type of data, and also procedures. And we are still talking about abstracts, not the method section of RA. And then still within the abstract, the result pretty much quite straightforward. So the author simply pinpoint the key results of the research. And then moving on to introduction, the conventional move across the board is what we call by establishing a research territory. The particular step that has been found to be conventional across the board is topic generalization. So what the authors are doing here is to make some big claims about their research topic, right? And then the next move is establishing a research gap or establishing a niche. And a conventional step in question is indicating a gap. So what I'm highlighting here is some linguistic cues, like they employ some lexical cues like missing, however, right, lack, and so on and so forth. And the last move in the introduction section is presenting their work. In this case, the authors are presenting what their research will be about in their attempt to fill in the gap. And as you can see, there is some, again, similarities in terms of the kind of lexical cues, right? And then the structure of their ideas. Most um, paragraphs start with purpose. This present study aims to, right? And then they also include research questions or hypotheses, and some even include principal research outcome. Moving on to method, uh, the move that we've found to be conventional across the board is contextualizing method, in which case the authors describe the subjects or participants, and is especially more robust or dominant in the humanities field. So we see here examples of the author mentioning the number of participants, right? Locus, for instance, and so on and so forth. And then the next move, still in the method section, is describing the study. Um, in this case, describing the procedures. If you look at the introduction sample, the authors were describing the assessments, right? The procedures, and so on and so forth. In the medicine sample, for instance, the authors were talking about who involved in doing what, right? In what case and how. Now, moving on to results and discussion and conclusion. So, just for your information, not all research journals or research articles incorporate a separate section of conclusions. So, in some fields, in some journals, conclusions are part of discussions, or they don't even have a conclusion section altogether. So that is why the last section here is the result and discussion. And as you can see shortly, there will be moves which are considered part of discussion, which are actually conclusion. So the first move under result and discussion is presenting key results. The step in question here is presenting results neutrally. By neutrally, the authors do not provide let's say commentaries, explanation. So what they are doing is to simply present what they found. So if it has to do with quantitative analysis, then we will simply present tables, figures, numerical data. When it has to do with a quantitative analysis, for instance, what they will be doing is to present excerpts, right, of the interview or data from observations. And the next move is, the next step under presenting key results is highlighting results. So it is not sufficient for the authors in the data that we were looking at to simply present data neutrally. They also highlight results. So one of the strategies that they employed is to contrast data from different sources, or they may somehow highlight certain key or certain important aspects of the data that for the readers to somehow see. And then the next move is commenting or interpreting key results. And this is especially true in terms of frequency or salience. The occurrence is more robust in humanities fields, education, linguistics, and psychology. So here we see an example where the author is trying to somehow interpret what the results imply. And then the next step is explaining or discussing effects. So somehow after they make some commentaries or they interpret the data, the next step that they employ is to explain how that implicates, or how that brings implications for the existing theories or for the existing body of literature. And finally, drawing implications. So this is something that you typically write in the conclusion section. Quite interestingly, we might expect that authors will end up with the summary, but it is not actually the case in this corpus. So in my present corpus, most researchers somehow conventionally end their documents or research articles with recommendations. So they perhaps, especially it is very true for articles that don't have a separate conclusion. They think that the summary has been, laid out in the result and discussion, and so what they need to do at the end of discussion is to simply propose recommendation for future research or future practice. In conclusion, what we found 12 conventional or obligatory moves of RA sections, starting from abstract to conclusion across disciplines. So our principal goal was to somehow argue against the existing claims that the realization of moves and steps is pretty much discipline specific. And we try to argue that there are conventional moves and steps across the research article section, albeit different disciplinary variation. We have to acknowledge slight variations, disciplinary speaking. So, for instance, in the medicine subcorpus, we've seen a greater number of conventional moves. So somehow the medical work quite sticks out across, when we compare that to other fields, because it realizes the most moves across the board. And then some implication, perhaps the findings of these research outcomes are to be useful to be incorporated into English course for students or training workshop for novice researchers. And another, which is also an inseparable part of the project, is we also look at lexical bundles in each section of the RA. And our hypothesis was there will be some connection between each section of the RA and the kind of lexical bundles that these authors utilized. That's pretty much it. Thank you so much for listening. And with that, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Waalaikumsalam. Thank you very much, Prof. Eri, for a fascinating and interesting talk on move analysis, genre analysis, rhetorical bundles in Scopus-indexed journals. We welcome questions from the floor. Let me see. Okay, Song Jang Jing. Okay, she asked, her study is about meta-discourse markers in research articles. How can you segment the results, discussion, and conclusion sections of some research articles, because some RAs merge the results and discussion, or discussion going into conclusion? And then secondly, how can you search the list of bundles in ENT-CONC? All right, that's the question.
All right.
Segmenting.
Such an interesting question, and actually that was one of the challenges that our research assistant had to deal with in the process of segmenting data. So when we dealt with the research articles that don't have a separate conclusion section, what we did was we go by the book, right? So in this genre analysis or rhetorical structure framework, we have to go by the so-called communicative intent. So do not get stuck with, let's say, paragraphs, because some authors might merge multiple communicative purposes in one paragraph. Don't also get stuck with or get fooled by, let's say, a combination of sentences, or perhaps the first two sentences in the last paragraph, or the last three sentences in the last paragraph could be part of the conclusion. Because again, some authors may have their own styles of merging different communicative purposes in one slide. And so we pretty much look at what each, let's say, sentence means in the result and discussion section. And we start with the analytical framework from Moreno and Swells, which states, for instance, there are three moves under conclusion section, summary, implications, and recommendation. And so we start from the end. We start from the end of the paper, and we try to somehow pinpoint whether this paragraph perhaps can be considered proposing or recommending future work. And so that will be considered conclusion section. And then we move upward, right? From the end to the middle. So the last paragraph, for instance, according to our analysis, that could be part of, in terms of move, that could be part of recommending future research. Perhaps what comes prior to that potentially is a summary or is implication and a paragraph. And so we look at that until we see some, let's say, boundaries, because a typical discussion section ends with limitations or ends with um, you know uh, a discussion explaining results or discussing effects. So of course the boundaries are not clear cut, and that's why we had to employ two different raters to make sure that we are not heavily biased by our own understanding of the research, the content, and how we interpret the moves. And so there were some debates or different arguments about which particular paragraph should be part of which section. But uh, at the end of the day, we agreed to a certain analysis. So that's why we try to segment or to distinguish between discussion and conclusion. Um, what was the second part of the question?
The second part was, how can you search the list of bundles in AntConc? Do you put
Oh,
them
okay.
in one text file and search them once?
Well, I think Dr. Afida has to invite me again for another talk. Just kidding.
Yes, indeed.
So I was initially uh, interested in pretty much presenting the whole results of the research project, but it's gonna be too dense, right? Because the project comprises two, I mean, interrelated topics. One focuses on the rhetorical structure, move and step realization in research articles, and it is corpus based, but somehow we did not employ any corpus tools. With respect to rhetorical analysis, some researchers, perhaps you may have heard about this, use a, a, an analytical tool called and mover, so developed by Anthony. But
Mm.
somehow the database on which this tool was developed was only on result and discussion. So when we experimented with abstracts, for instance, we ended up having to provide lots of training data. So, so we decided we didn't want to waste too much time training the tool, and so we analyzed the data pretty much manually. So for those of you who are interested in somehow pursuing a rhetorical or genre analysis, um, there is actually a tool called AndMover, and if you have time to really provide training data to increase accuracy, that will help you a lot in segmenting text, and then providing with initial moves or categories. Of course, you have to do some further verifications, but um, I guess with a tool and assuming that you have done some training to increase its accuracy, you can deal with a much larger corpus. Um, so when it comes to lexical bundles, we use Ancon, and we use the same set of data. And to be honest with you, we started out with segmenting different sections. So we separated abstract, introduction, method, result discussion, and conclusion, right? Um, because analysis of lexical bundle is quite sensitive to the amount of tokens. And so we somehow did some reduction of data reduction. As you've seen from my slides, the number of words in the social humanities field is much greater than that in applied natural sciences. And so when we did the lexical binding analysis, the number of articles involved in the corpus is not that equal because we try to balance the amount of tokens. And so we simply use Ankong and we just use the ngram, right? And there are different parameters, um, whether you use like 3 words to the right or 3 words to the left, and something that we can discuss further on later. Okay, no
Okay,
worries.
thank you, Prof. Is there any more questions from the floor? So I do have something curious because when you analyze a lot of data, and you also mentioned that you have intercoder reliability, how much, this is for the benefit of everyone, although it's a basic question, how much of the data, from the whole data, that you subjected your raters to analyze in order for the rest of the data to be analyzed automatically afterwards, or still with people, coders?
Right. Uh, that's a very easy question with a difficult answer. Well, so researchers in this field have proposed different, um, so to speak, threshold, right? So because what we are doing is to really pretty much to validate data analysis to make sure much greater level of reliability and to avoid as much bias as possible. Um, from let's say 100% corpus, we according to the proposed frameworks, we have two choices. One, the if we when we deal with a much larger corpus, we can simply extract 10%. But something like 180 articles, right? I mean, still that's a big amount of words or token, um, because you can pretty much do the math. 180 times 700 or 800 words, right? So that's a lot of data to work out. So we ended up extracting random like text 25%. So 25% of the entire, let's say, population of the entire corpus, we picked out randomly, and we assigned to research assistants after sufficient training in genre analysis and in the frameworks that we adopted to relabel or to analyze the data. And later we calculated the so-called conformity, the amount of agreement percentage-wise, and we had to agree with certain labeling or certain analysis at the end of the day. So, at the end of the day, the amount of agreement is 100%.
All right. So this can, a follow-up question after that that can be perplexing for students is or researchers is, once the coding reliability is achieved, what's next? Now, will the data go through automated analysis?
Right.
Somebody mute. Who is? Sorry, I can't see the. Let's see if there's anyone that is not muted. Just let me check. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. So from the findings of mutual agreement of the coding, you will generate the signals, right? The lexical cues. So that will be, where do you input them in the, where do they go into when you start your automated analysis?
Right. With automatic or automated analysis, let's say using OnMover, when you found out that, let's say, the accuracy level is below, let's say, 70%, that's a signal that you have to train the machine, right? And so what you should do is to extract like 25% or 30% of the data to be manually analyzed, and then the outcome of your analysis will be inputted into the machine, and then you regenerate the analysis. If somehow the stats went up, then let's say up to 80% or even 90%, then that's a good sign that you can somehow assume that the analysis from the machine is quite reliable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Prof, sorry, I might have missed it. Did you use Entmover?
No, I did not. For this particular project, but I use hand movers for other projects.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I didn't use hand mover was because hand mover was quite accurate with the result in discussion section of research articles, because that's how Anthony developed the tool for. But you need to provide more training when you analyze abstract introduction method and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. All right, understood. Thank you, Prof. And do you have any more questions? Here, Ria asked, would you mind giving information relating to coding qualitative data that is appropriate and accurate in getting results of the research? Who? I'm sorry, somebody is talking actually. Is it, where is it coming from? Yeah. So the question was an application to code qualitative data that is appropriate and accurate in getting results? Any application? I suppose it's like en vivo and
Right. I think
FSMI.
something like and people. Quite recently, I read Young and Highland 2021 research on the use of hypes in research articles, and they mentioned this tool, guys, it has to do with SCITE, but haven't used that application ever, and perhaps will in the future entertain that. But what they did with the application was because they work with a humongous amount of data, because they want to see the longitudinal trend of the researcher use of hypes across social humanities and STEM fields into decades, right? And so lots of data. And so they inputted all the data to the application, and they somehow extracted 10% of random data to be manually analyzed by human, raters.
All right, thank you, Prof. And we have a question from Ikmal. He says he knows you. Okay, he's over in my faculty. He says, what rhetorical and lexical differences distinguish highly cited ones from the low cited ones?
All right. This is actually a work in progress, because in this or in the present research that I just talked about, we simply focus on highly cited research articles. We did not, by any chance, compare and contrast highly cited articles with poorly cited articles. But I did a quite similar line of study, but with much reduced data this year, looking at only abstracts. And so we dealt with a corpus of, hold on, I might pull out wrong amount of data. So I picked out eight scholars, eight scholars, 16 scholars, eight scholars from top Indonesian researchers, and eight scholars from top two world scientists, cross-disciplinaries. Electrical engineer, sorry, biochemical engineering, and then finance, and so on and so forth. And so I simply focus on the abstracts. So 1600, right? 1600 abstracts. And I looked at those abstracts which have high citations, and those which poor citations of the same fields and of the same set of authors. And there are different rhetorical patterns and hype words. So I'm not talking about lexical differences, but in particular, translate words or booster, something like crucial, important, or potential, right? Or novel, right? So those marketing words in the academia. And there's a quite significant difference in the realization of move one. So if you can recall what I presented when it comes to abstract, move one has to do with introduction, but there are four different strategies or four different steps under move one. Significance, definition, generalization, and research gap, right? And there is a quite important difference between highly cited research abstracts and poorly cited research abstract when it comes to significance and research gap. So poorly cited research abstract do not manifest or do not realize these two steps, significance and research gaps, as intensely or as those highly cited research abstracts.
Sure. It's when we search, it's like when we search and browse for articles, and then we look at the abstracts, and somehow it is not written in a robust manner, and you can easily compare it with those which are in Q1 or Q2. Apart from it being a very advanced research, of course, that might be very highly cited. Thank you, Prof, for that, and I hope the audience are satisfied with the answers given by Prof. And just some announcements before we end here, Prof. If you would like to be a speaker in MCRN, there's a form to fill in the chat box, expression of interest, and there is an attendance form also for you all to fill. So I see my colleague there who also deals with lexical bundles. Shall I call your name? Do you have any questions for Prof? Ya, apa dia? Roslina, Dr. Roslina. Malu pula dia.
Hi, Prof. It's very interesting to hear your research here, Prof. It gives us a lot of ideas on what to do next, yeah, because I've done some research on lexical bundles as well, and my student is also doing a master's thesis on lexical bundle. So, I think a few other students here, postgraduate students who are also doing lexical bundles, I think benefited a lot from your research, yeah? I just want to ask you one thing though. Prof, I know that you have analyzed lexical bundles, but you didn't manage to explain further, but you did mention having hypothesis. So is that a common structure in corpus study, having hypothesis for corpus research?
Well, it is not uncommon, especially for quantitative analysis, because we might start out with some suspicions, right? Or there is a connection or a correlation, let's say, between the status of publication and lexical bundles, for instance, or between the different types of quartiles and lexical bundles. And we utilize z-tests, or in some cases, depending on the purpose, t-tests or something along the same line. And so what we ended up doing is to really test the hypothesis that, for instance, there is a relationship, statistically speaking, between the realization of lexical bundles and whether the articles was accepted or rejected. And that's what I got published, or what I did a few years back.
So it is not uncommon, yeah. So it can be done, yeah. Although a lot of corpus research do not have hypotheses, but it is something that has been done in research before. That is what you mean, yeah, Prof? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof, for sharing and for accepting our invitation to share your.
Oh, it's my honor. It's my honor. I hope we can collaborate later with Dr. Afid and Dr. Lawson.
Let's
because
collaborate.
Afid used to be my student.
Yes, we see a lot of students from Indonesia. Welcome, thank you, and yeah, why not collaborate? We are just across the waters. So I think we have come towards the end of the session, and it's such a pleasure to have both speakers today. MCRN has something in store in 2026, which we will release to interested parties to join. But now let's have a picture taken with Prof Eri. Prof Eri, I just told a colleague of mine, you look so young. Berapa
I'm old.
Apa umurnya ni? Alright. So, remarkable, yeah, it looks so young. Dah prof dah. Okay. Alright, shall we have the picture, Raihana?
Okay, all right, I'm ready this time. I've managed to find a way to, just
Yeah, it's tricky to
keys,
snapshot.
yes.
Yeah, definitely tricky to snapshot.
Okay, all right. So, anyone else wants to, appear
Switch
in
on your cameras, our Indonesian students, whoever you are.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, our international audience. Let's let's have good relationships by having good pictures.
Okay, all right. So I will take the first picture now. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let me check. Okay, I have it. So maybe another one, freestyle maybe. Okay, 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So I have the second picture as well. Okay, all right, done.
Thank you, Rahana. She is the multimedia expert here. And with that, thank you, Prof. Eri, so much. And to the audience, our MCRN audience, we are closed for December. And we would like to wish everyone happy holidays and a happy new year. And see you next year, inshallah. Bye-bye and all the best.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, everyone. And that's a wrap.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Afida. Thank you. Thank you as well to all of the participants. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.